The year was 476 AD. The Western Roman Empire had finally collapsed. The last emperor was removed from power. For millions of people, it seemed like the greatest civilization the world had ever known had come to an end. History books often tell us that this was the day Rome died, but that isn't the whole story. Because while the city of Rome was fading into history, another city was preparing to carry the Roman legacy for another 1,000 years. Its streets were filled with merchants from every corner of the known world. Its walls seemed impossible to break. Its harbors controlled the trade between continents. Its emperors still called themselves Romans. That city was Constantinople, and its survival would become one of history's greatest mysteries. How could one empire disappear while another continued to thrive? What did Constantinople understand that Rome never did? The answer wasn't one miracle. It wasn't one battle, and it certainly wasn't luck. It was the result of extraordinary geography, remarkable engineering, brilliant diplomacy, and leaders who understood that survival often depended more on intelligence than on strength. To understand why Constantinople endured, we must go back more than a century before Rome's fall. At the beginning of the 4th century, Emperor Constantine faced a difficult reality. Rome was still magnificent. Its monuments inspired awe. Its history commanded respect. But it was no longer the ideal place to rule an empire stretching across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The frontiers were simply too far away. Communication was slow. Enemies threatened multiple borders at once, and the center of economic activity had gradually shifted eastward. Constantine needed something Rome could no longer provide: a new capital, one that could respond quickly to military threats while controlling the richest trade routes in the Mediterranean. His choice surprised many. He selected the ancient Greek city of Byzantium. At first glance, it seemed insignificant compared to Rome, but appearances can be deceiving. Byzantium occupied one of the most extraordinary locations on Earth. It stood where Europe met Asia. It overlooked the Bosporus Strait, one of the world's most valuable waterways. Every ship traveling between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean passed within sight of its walls. Trade flowed through the city every single day. Gold, silk, grain, spices, precious metals, and ideas all arrived from distant lands. Whoever controlled Constantinople controlled one of the greatest commercial crossroads in history. In the year 330, Constantine officially transformed Byzantium into Constantinople. It quickly became the new heart of the Roman Empire. Magnificent churches rose above its skyline. Grand palaces overlooked the sea. Wide avenues welcomed merchants, diplomats, scholars, and travelers from across 3 continents. Unlike Rome, Constantinople wasn't built around memories of past greatness. It was designed for the future. But prosperity alone has never guaranteed survival. History is filled with wealthy cities that disappeared almost overnight. Constantinople needed something more. Something that would make generations of invaders hesitate before even attempting an attack. It needed walls unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. During the 5th century, as pressure increased along the empire's borders, the city expanded its defenses dramatically. The result became one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements: the Theodosian Walls. This wasn't a single barrier. It was an entire defensive system. A wide moat slowed attackers before they even reached the city. Behind it stood an outer wall. Behind that rose an even larger inner wall, reinforced by nearly 100 massive towers. Each layer forced invaders to fight again and again. Even if one section fell, another still stood behind it. For centuries, these walls became almost legendary. Persians approached, They failed. Arab armies surrounded the city. They failed. Bulgarian rulers tested its defenses. They failed. The Rus launched attacks from the sea. They failed. Again and again, powerful armies arrived, believing Constantinople would finally fall. Again and again, they left disappointed. The walls protected the city, but stone alone never saves an empire. Behind those mighty defenses, another system was quietly protecting Constantinople, one far less visible and perhaps even more powerful. Its leaders understood something many rulers never learn. Every victory comes with a cost. Every war weakens even the winner. Instead of fighting every enemy, Byzantine emperors often chose another path. They negotiated. They paid tribute when necessary. They formed temporary alliances. They arranged royal marriages. They exchanged gifts. They gathered intelligence through vast networks of diplomats and spies. Sometimes, they even encouraged rival kingdoms to fight one another instead of confronting Constantinople directly. To outsiders, these decisions sometimes appeared weak, but they bought something far more valuable than pride. They bought time. Years, sometimes decades, sometimes entire generations. While neighboring kingdoms exhausted themselves in endless wars, Constantinople continued growing richer. Its markets remained open. Its universities flourished. Its libraries preserved knowledge that much of Europe would later rediscover centuries afterward. The empire wasn't simply surviving, it was adapting. And that ability to adapt would become its greatest weapon. Because beyond the walls, beyond diplomacy, and beyond wealth, Constantinople possessed one final advantage. A secret so feared that enemy fleets hesitated before approaching its shores. An invention whose formula has never been fully recovered. An innovation that transformed the sea itself into a battlefield. It became known simply as Greek fire.
Greek fire was unlike any weapon the ancient world had ever seen. It wasn't simply fire. It was a carefully guarded secret. Launched through bronze siphons mounted on Byzantine ships, it erupted into blazing streams that continued burning even across the surface of the sea. Enemy sailors watched in disbelief as water failed to extinguish the flames. Panic often spread before the battle had truly begun. To this day, historians still debate its exact composition. The Byzantine Empire protected the formula so carefully that it disappeared forever. But Greek fire alone did not save Constantinople. It simply bought more time. And time was always the empire's most valuable resource. For centuries, new enemies continued to emerge. Persian kings, Arab caliphates, Bulgarian empires, Norman armies, steppe warriors. Every generation believed it might witness the city's final days. Yet Constantinople endured. Not because it was invincible, but because it constantly evolved. Its emperors reformed the army when necessary. Its diplomats forged new alliances. Its merchants rebuilt trade after every crisis. Its engineers repaired walls damaged by earthquakes and sieges. The empire understood a lesson that many powerful nations never do. Survival belongs to those willing to change before change becomes unavoidable. Yet even the greatest civilizations cannot escape every mistake. By the beginning of the 13th century, the empire faced a danger unlike any it had encountered before. This threat did not arrive from distant deserts or across foreign frontiers. It came from the very civilization that shared its faith. In 1204, soldiers of the Fourth Crusade reached Constantinople. Originally sent to reclaim Jerusalem, they turned instead toward the richest Christian city in the world. The result shocked medieval Europe. Churches were stripped of priceless treasures. Libraries were scattered. Palaces were looted.
Masterpieces that had survived for centuries disappeared forever. The damage reached far beyond gold or marble. Trust was shattered. The empire eventually reclaimed its capital, but it never fully recovered the strength it had once possessed. Trade shifted elsewhere. Resources became scarce. Territories gradually slipped away. What had once ruled vast lands across 3 continents became a much smaller state centered almost entirely around its magnificent capital. Still, Constantinople refused to surrender. Even weakened, the city remained one of the strongest fortresses on earth. Its towering walls continued to intimidate would-be conquerors. Its strategic position remained unmatched. Its people continued repairing, rebuilding, and adapting. The empire had become smaller, but its determination had not. Then, in the 15th century, a young Ottoman ruler began preparing for the challenge that generations before him had failed to overcome. His name was Mehmed II. Unlike previous conquerors, he understood that defeating Constantinople required more than courage. It required innovation. He invested in something that would forever change the balance between offense and defense: massive cannons. For centuries, the Theodosian Walls had resisted ladders, siege towers, catapults, and battering rams. They had been designed for the ancient world. Gunpowder belonged to a new one. In the spring of 1453, the Ottoman army surrounded Constantinople. For weeks, enormous cannons pounded walls that had protected the city for nearly 1,000 years. Inside, Emperor Constantine XI and his defenders fought with remarkable determination. They knew what was at stake. This was no longer just a battle for one city. It was the final chapter of the Roman Empire. On May 29, 1453, Constantinople finally fell. The city that had survived for more than a millennium after the fall of Rome had reached its end. Yet, calling it a failure would completely miss the point. Constantinople accomplished something no one believed possible. It preserved Roman law. It protected classical knowledge. It connected continents through commerce. It inspired extraordinary architecture. It shaped Christianity. It influenced diplomacy. It safeguarded ancient learning until it helped ignite the Renaissance in Western Europe. For nearly 1,000 years, it served as a bridge between worlds, between East and West, between antiquity and the Middle Ages, between the Roman Empire and the modern world. Perhaps that is why the story of Constantinople remains so powerful. It reminds us that civilizations do not survive because they are the strongest. They survive because they continue learning. They adapt when others refuse. They prepare while others celebrate. They invest in tomorrow while others remain trapped in yesterday. Rome built one of history's greatest empires. Constantinople proved that preserving an empire can be even more difficult than creating one. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. Empires are rarely destroyed by a single enemy. More often, they are shaped by the decisions they make long before the final battle ever begins. If you want more stories of power, survival, and the secrets history tried to hide, subscribe to History Unsealed, because the past was never truly lost. It was simply waiting to be unsealed.